Wonderful. So, welcome and thank you for coming to the Internet of Production Alliance's community call for the month of September. I'm Sarah Hutton, Research and Community Engagement Lead for the Internet of Production Alliance. And today we're going to be focusing quite a bit on the people and skills spec, but not so much on the release of the specification itself, but the use cases that are in development and testing for proof of practice with people and skills. And so we'll kick off the meeting with just a few brief updates on the IOP Alliance as a community. I'll do a little refresher on the people and skills specification and some of the updates since our last call that focused on it earlier this year. And then we have a couple of speakers who will be joining us to talk about use case for proof of concept and proof of practice in both MAKE and the Innovative Manufacturing Awards. So for today, just wanted to give a shout out in particular to Jessica Ngema, who was not able to join today's call, but serves as project lead for both IMA, the Innovative Manufacturing Awards, and also for the MAKE project. And we have Thomas Mboa and Gertrude Go joining us today to talk about the use cases of MAKE and IMA respectively and how the People and Skills standard is integrated. So this again is a reminder of the community notepad that we share. And if anybody else who has more than one screen or isn't also moderating like I am, if you wouldn't mind updating, continuing to post the link to that in chat, I would appreciate it. And so the intent is really to take collaborative notes as the conversation happens. And that is also how we collect questions and respond to them and then send, the artifact of these conversations after the meetings take place. So just to get started, there are a few updates. From the IOP Alliance in general, we're kicking off the fall again after, hopefully lots of great summer holidays for folks, but also a lot of work. And so just a quick update on the Open Nowhere Data Awards. The teams awarded with the round 2 are wrapping up their data collection process, and they will be, excuse me, they will be speaking about not only their results from the collection, but the process too. And one of the things we really wanted to focus on in this round is the process of data collection, community engagement, and the ethics of engaging in citizen science using data that will go into OpenStreetMaps. So if you want to take a look at the community forum for ongoing conversations, there's the link. In Open Know-How, we recently had a meeting of the initiative group to frame the work that we want to focus on for the coming months. And one of the larger initiatives that we will be prioritizing as a start is combining efforts with GOSH on connecting open source hardware directories. This comes from work that GOSH started with some funding to develop another platform that would serve as a directory. And so if you want to go to the group meetings for that discussion, that there's the link. You can see some of the folks who were in the conversation, and that particular community thread is also where information on upcoming events and discussions will be posted. And last note about a recent program ending, we participated in the Code for Science and Society Digital Incubator program, focusing on open governance and decision-making processes and structures specifically for the Internet of Production Alliance. After a several-month process we were part of a cohort of 4 different teams, which if you go to that link, you can see the teams all focusing on open infrastructure, some governance, some community building. We had our final presentations yesterday, and that video will be posted and distributed via our newsletter soon. A couple of online events that are coming up. We have the Sustainability of Networks online program tomorrow at 1 p.m. Universal Coordinated Time. And there you can go ahead and scan that QR code. We'll also be sending out notes after the community call, and the link for registration is available online.
Okay.
Somebody have a question, or sorry, I can't see.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, because I can't see chat and I just have a one screen, feel free to just unmute and ask. For the October community call, that's the next one coming up, we'll be focusing on the business models catalog, which has been developed as a part of our project work with Anna Sarah Lowe and others joining the conversation. And at this point, Andrew Lamb, do you have any additional, I'll stop sharing just briefly. Do you have any additional updates that you would like to provide on behalf of the community?
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for hosting us again today. Look, it's quite an exciting time for the Internet of Production Alliance, because some of the big projects that we've been working on with support from the Alpha P Sloan Foundation have officially come to an end, and we're approaching the end of, as we get to the end of the year, work with the RISA community of makerspaces, which is, we're doing lots of activities at the moment, doing some experiments about distributed manufacturing. And well, we are being approached and asked by a number of different actors, the British government in particular, for funding bids. Basically, they're interested as organizations that are particularly interested in being part of distributed manufacturing in international development, the international development context. So we're writing lots of funding bids at the moment. So next year could be a pretty big year. One of the things that we're going to be doing over the course of, well, if all goes to plan, over the course of the next month or so, is introducing people to a new brand and a new logo, and we're quite excited about that. I think it's nice to have, well, just the sheer amount of effort and support that we've been getting in kind from strategic communications, a consultancy called Profit. And they, I think they've come up with some really nice designs. And I want to thank members of the community, including quite a few of you on the call here today, for contributing to the process, all the interviews and things that were done to gather people's views to feed into that. And I think the other thing that's always on my mind as we looking into the future is the kind of partnerships and community members we're beginning to engage with. And I think there's going to be some exciting times. We've got the AfroLabs conference coming up. I know Martin Olley's on the call today. He's hopefully going to be representing some of our work there. And we have, well, a number of the new partners, potentially through the International Association for the Study of the Commons, and a group called Automation Alley in Detroit. There's some really interesting groups that we're working with and want to work with more in the coming year. So to some extent, we've been waiting to have a little bit more certainty about things like the brand and some of the projects being actually signed before we focus on the community building again. But I think it just feels like quite an exciting moment for the Internet of Production Alliance. And I think the People and Skills Standard, which has already been trialed as you might hear. That is an example of the kind of contribution that we're able to make, which we think is unique in the world and brings people together. So, yeah. Is there anything else I should say, Sarah?
I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if you wanted to mention pose or not, or until we hear more.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
one of the funding bids we did was with the platform for open source ecosystems
Yes.
with the National Science Foundation.
Mhm.
And this is quite a bold project with
Yes.
the University of Massachusetts and the International Association for the Study of the Commons, which is essentially would be a, if it's successful, which is a big if, and it'll be a while before we hear.
Yeah.
It's essentially a big investment in this community, and it's all about trying to organize face-to-face events, organize better support and tools for the community to be able to interact with the different standards and systems we're putting in place, but then grow the community as well. So there's, to be honest with you, whether or not we get the funding, which I hope to be able to hear about that in the next, well, it would be nice to hear before Christmas, but in the next 4 or 5 months, whether or not we get the funding, the exercise of putting that grant together and having a sort of an agenda for action for the community, separate from the agendas of action in the technology that we think will underpin the Internet of Production. That was quite an exciting process to go through, and we'll be using that thinking as we continue to raise more money.
Yes.
Everything we do is open. If you're interested to read this 70, 80-page bid, we'll speak to our partners to make sure that we can share it, but we're quite pleased with it. And it's another example of kind of us being in a moment of lots of fundraising and partnerships and growth. So yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. You, of course, were very involved in writing that. Thank you.
Sure, of course. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of the continually growing research and development agenda, and that's been with the IOP. And I love the focus on community and growing the ecosystem, because it's all about the people. That being said, people and skills, that was my lead-in for people and skills data specification. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my video and share my screen. Okay, just to give a few updates. And for some of you, I know that there are some new faces to this call right now. And there are also others who have heard about the spec or been involved. This is going to be information that you already are quite familiar with, but just a very brief overview about what are we talking about here. What are we talking about? What are we not talking about? So the people and skills standard. That's, we started out by framing the conversation that we were developing a people and skills data standard that is really, the main goal was to create a shared understanding, shared language, and shared approach to capturing all of the the tacit, the implicit procedural knowledge, the trainings, and everything necessary to make a thing. This is knowledge that the makers possess either via formal certification based training or maybe informal training in their maker spaces or in local community centers or from another vocation. And so there was a lot of research that went into this preliminarily, and there's a good reason why this didn't exist yet, is because it's very complex. And there's, we also started out, excuse me, with the why. Why create this, this shared understanding? It really was with the intent of creating a foundation to start envisioning a maker passport. a digital passport. And that's something that Thomas will be talking about a little bit more as a part of the Make project as the use case for this. And we really wanted to focus on like, what is this problem solving for? Who is it solving for? And it really is to help, provide, data sovereignty, more agency to makers, moving between systems, moving between spaces. One of the other use cases that we're looking at that Gertrude will be talking about a little bit is, how can makers be, what can be representative of the skills that they have when a call for bid is going out to produce an item or something? How do you do that matchmaking process between makers and produced items? And then of course, the how honestly has been one of the easier parts of the process because authentication mechanisms already exist. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so this was the original timeframe for the Maker Passport project as identified, dovetailing the work that was funded by Sloan with what was funded by the Horizon 2020 Make project. And so looking at the publication of the data spec itself, May 2023, we were on target with that. And so I'll be talking a little bit about what has happened since then. So the spec was released, actually it was released in very beta form in May. And then we brought together community members, and I'll share the link actually after this in chat so people can jump right into it, and we'll send it out again. It was released as a beta in PubPub. It's a community publishing platform that's actually really fantastic for collaborative work and also versioning control. And it's worked well for having community members take a look at the specification and provide feedback, ask their questions. And now we're on version 4 as a result of that, of the consistent integration and re-exploration, revisiting of what needs to be updated as a part of this. And as you can see, just from this quick snapshot of the table of contents, it's this particular PubPub publication. It doesn't just include the data spec itself, but also, what it's for, who it's for, the introduction to it. There's a specification of course itself, but also, a lexicon, jargon buster of like, this is what the terminology means, so that when it comes to, what can you possibly use this for, it's easier for a general audience to understand. It's, got some different, chunks of code in there, but it's not strictly documentation just for technologically savvy folks. And there's also, recommendations for governance of this specification because we want it to be a living, breathing thing beyond, just these preliminary use cases that is really developed continuously and owned by the community. And so following the initial release, we have a small working group of folks from all over the world, different organizations. The list of these folks are in the specification itself, and it's growing. We developed some very simple forms for, prototyping the people and skills specification for use in, call for bids and the EMA project, so that, people could ostensibly like sign up for what could be turned into a Maker Passport. And there's also a blob of JSON that can be used for having the form. If you want to use the form yourself, there's a Google form, and also, that you can easily print out the form and use it. So it's very flexible. The preliminary conversations in the working group, excuse me, and this is really where, the preliminary use case with the Make project comes into play, is that when you're talking about credentialing, any type of credentialing, or, sharing like, this is the knowledge I have, these are the skills that I have, the authorizing organization or the authority is the really important piece. Credentials don't really carry a lot of weight if you don't have an organization that's taking ownership of that. And that's where I want to state, when I mentioned it when introducing this in this call, what the people and skill spec is and what it isn't. It is just a data specification, and it is open and it is flexible. It's been designed to provide flexibility to maker spaces by using, JSON specifically, so you can identify, an array of objects, so you can customize your certifications and trainings and whatnot. However, it does not provide any sort of accreditation or, stamp of approval or badge. It can be tied into an open badging system, but it does not provide that inherently. So that's where I want to make a big point of that, because it's one of the most important things in all this work. If it will get used for, recognition of certain skills and the development of badges, you have to have an agreement with a large body of who those authorizing organizations or issuers are. And that's what came up immediately when we first started talking about this. And so this is a visualization that most, many folks in this space will recognize. But just, it helps to provide that context of when we're talking about what this specification is and what it isn't. What I was just mentioning was the issuers, like who are the accrediting agencies? Like that is a really important part of this process that is not necessarily a part of, technically speaking, it's a part of the people and skills specification, but it doesn't have any meaning without that agreement within the consortia or the network or the organization that ends up creating a maker passport or an open badging system. So getting to that part of, meaning making and preliminary proof of concept and proof of practice, just a very brief overview of the MAKE project before I turn it over to Tama. For those who aren't already familiar, it's a multi-organization consortium project that is looking to establish these digital innovation hubs, a large ecosystem of them of around 500 plus nodes. And there are different work packages and directions that are involved in this project. And the technical innovation component in the lower left-hand corner of this visualization is really where the work on the Maker Passport comes into play, and also with the Internet of Production and our work specifically, a lot of it comes in with the technical innovation piece. And this is where, these work packages here are very much where the Internet of Production is being involved in the MAKE project. And here with the data standard and Maker Passport, that's where people and skills really lives. And so with that, I'm going to have Tama go ahead and share his screen and speak a little bit about how PSS relates to the work of the MAKE project.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation to share how the makerspace, the Maker Passport, and the personal skills can be useful for the work package 3 of the MAKE project. The work package 3 specifically is about open education, and the idea is to establish a joint learning space for African and European makerspace. So, but specifically, we are committed to deliver an open makerspace toolkit, to deliver some training of trainers report, and for deliver a MOOC platform at the end of the project. So today, I would like to focus mostly on 2 points, which I think are very connected with the Makerspace Passport and the work done by internet alliance. So if we are in the process actually to finalize the toolkits, and we have some specific parts explaining how to start the makerspace, which kind of activities we have a makerspace, or the makerspace is managed, and the best practices in terms of ethics and responsible innovation makerspaces. But the very interesting part from our perspective, and what the maker passport can be useful, is about strengthening the community, because in strengthening the community, we describe or identify 3 levels. One important level is capacity building of this community. This can be done at individual level. This can be done at the collective level or community level, but is the core of the success of makerspaces, because you agree with me that you need a skilled people, not only technical, but also in terms of management, to be able to run a successful work package, a successful makerspace. And if you see here, you can on this slide, you can see some skills that we identify that are very important. But the key things with the makerspace passport is the time that we are going to gain in this work package, because they have done a really great work in terms of producing the content, in terms of mapping where equipment and other maker spaces can be found. This is something really useful that we are planning, or we will scale up in this work package so that it can be used across the network. What is so important, when you take the idea behind the makerspace passport to sharp the skill and master your career path, I think you have 2 ways where this can be very impactful. The first thing is related to the possibility, since the documents are open. So it's kind of open educational resources. As open educational resources, it means that everyone can learn everything. Just when you are interested, you can learn, you can acquire a new skill, and it's totally open. So the resources provided by the maker passport are really open to everyone. So you have this possibility to do autonomous learning, to learn what you want from where you are, or independently of if you have equipment or not, or if you are owner of a makerspace or not. This is very important to strengthen. It's very important to strengthen individual skills, and the way the maker passport itself is organized, people can find a location and try to see if there are some makerspace close to their place, if they can join these people and learn what they want to learn. If they don't have makerspace, it means that everyone technically should be able to join a makerspace when he wants and work on anything that he wants. The second interesting point for us as in work package 3 is this possibility to map equipment. Talking from the African perspective, I know how it can be difficult for some people and for some makers to get all equipment. But when we have this kind of equipment, or this kind of mapping of equipment across a country or across a city, it means that people can really act in a complementary way by exchanging or doing some, I will say externalization of some practice and some building of technical skills. For example, here, if I'm in Yaoundé, I can find equipment in another maker spaces and do what I want to do. Technically, this is really useful and it allows us to move forward without any competition, but with the idea of complementarity. This is very important too. And the third aspect, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Can you?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. The third aspect is about badge and workshop. I think this is extremely important. You know, I mentioned the first way that the makerspace passport can impact is about the autonomous learning. Not the autonomous learning as it is in machine learning, but the way that people can learn independently. But with the badge, I think someone or a community of maker can really shape or do a kind of a follow-up of the natural of skills that the member are able to acquire. They can even design, let me say, a trajectory or a curriculum for the type of skills that they want their member want, and they can control if someone has acquired the skill or not. This is interesting, and even if it's still a kind of informal education and not recognized by university or other kind of stuff, but it's very important for a community to know who is able to manage this kind of machines, or not. You know, some machine can be very difficult to handle, and so it will be great to know who is able to manage this kind of machine or not, the security. I think these three layers of the makerspace, the maker passport, how it's paid or how it's organized, fit really in the deliverable of the work package 3. And that is why in our plan, so this is something that we are going to really adopt and try to make it fit entirely in the work package. Finally, it's totally part of planning well with the MOOC that we are planning to release at the end of the project. Since these resources are open educational resources, they are released with the Creative Commons license. Is something that we can reuse, and also that we can advise for using even in local university and so on. For example, there is a lot of requests from many countries. Actually, today again, I discussed with some Senegalese delegation. They want to implement makerspace at the governmental level in many countries, in many cities, and I'm probably sure that they are going to send on as a link. Of course, I will also put all the member. They are going to send a request for us to support them in this project. So basically, that is how I see as a lead of work package 3, how to make a passport fit in our work and how it can help us deliver great and impactful open educational resources in the MEC project. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Tama. I really appreciate that. I put a couple of links into chat for folks to take a look at. First, there is the. Here, I'm gonna. Would you mind muting real quick, Tama? There's some excitement in the background.
Yes, I think so.
Oh, thanks. There is a blog posting on the Make Project page that talks. Here, I'll mute my videos. That's nobody. There's a blog post on the Make Project page that speaks also to the integration, how people and skills integrates into the Make Project. And also on that same page, there's a link to an ongoing survey, which are you the one who's providing management oversight for that survey, Toma? The one that's on specifically on OERs and makerspaces, pre-existing OERs?
Yes, it's the way it's me. So it's just for, so if someone has some resources to share, you can just fill the form.
Yes, yes. Yeah, there is a lot of excitement around that, because I know that in open educational resource discourse globally, there are a lot of conversations about this type of work. A lot of I've seen a lot of new materials cropping up surrounding skills-based training, particularly for trades and type of activities, welding and whatnot. So there's a lot of potential there. I'm very excited. Next, we're going to have is Gertrude. I know that her connection was fading in and out. I think she might actually have dropped at a point while Timon was talking. And so actually, Andrew, I'm going to ask you if you would like to speak to the distributed production process as a part of IMA, and a little bit more about how PSS integrates with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a shame. I was in meetings with Gertrude earlier today, and she seems to have perennial connectivity problems in Ghana. But it's been a pleasure working with her on this initiative. What we're trying to do with the distributed manufacturing trials is some experiments to learn how we can take a contract and spread it across a network for makers in various makerspaces to each make some portion of the total order. You need to know where the machines are. And so, we've mapped the machines in the makerspaces, but then we need to know who is actually going to make it. And so we've used the Make Project's concept of the Maker Passport and the People and Skills Standard to issue Maker Passports to the members of makerspaces. And I know we have Martin Olu on the call here today from Fab Lab Winam, and Frank Benton from Africa OSH as well, so that their organizations have been promoting this to their members, and people have been filling out their skills profiles according to the standard, the forms that we've set up for the projects, and which are based on the standard that Sarah has presented briefly today. Then what we've been doing is assessing, the skills. Does this person know how to? I'm going to shortcut this. Does this person know how to use a 3D printer? If they say that they do, for the purposes of the experiment, and assuming we've got enough resources, which so far hasn't been a problem, we issue them a contract. And we say, we would like you to manufacture 1, 10, 20, 50 of the total order of, say, 900 items that we'd like you to make. The first item we've been asking people to make is a writing aid, a simple 3D printed product to help people that have difficulty holding pens to be able to write. The second product is actually I see Ben Savanen is on the call here. So thank you, Ben, for your consultancy to help us get the documentation together for the writing aids. I really appreciate that. And it's gone very smoothly thanks to your documentation. There's an entire strand of potential work in terms of improving the documentation of open hardware, particularly medical device designs. So yes, but that's for another topic. And then we've got a test tube rack, and we've got, thanks to Apropedia, so a test tube rack thanks to Enrico Bassi, and thanks to Apropedia's work with the Intuitive Foundation, the Global Surgical Training Challenge, we've got a tibial fracture fixation, which is essentially a 3D printed leg bone to help surgeons practice the repair of the bone, basically, without having to practice on real people. So we've been distributing contracts, we've had a quotation process, and in the first round, we decided to send out the word through the makerspaces to be participating in the project. But since then, we've been sending it out to directly to makers that have maker passports. So we've been in touch with them directly. And we've learned some lessons from this. So first of all, one of the initial responses we got, depending on who we were speaking with, was that the People and Skills standard, the maker passport application form, essentially, was too long. So that's been simplified. One of the lessons we've learned is that not everybody is what our colleagues in Ghana would call tech savvy. So, they don't want to be communicating essentially through web browsers and email, but would be much happier doing things through WhatsApp and text messages, which has been an interesting design challenge. And then another lesson has been essentially, the question of how we promote inclusion of particularly women makers, but not necessarily not necessarily be that for that to become part of the identity in the passport. So there is to recognize that the skills are there, but not ever create a circumstance where people are winning a contract because they are that, particular demographic, whatever it might be. Because I think that in some ways could diminish, quite frankly, the skills that these people have. So there's been a bit of a balancing act there. I think also the people and skills, one of the lessons we've learned from the people and skills standard is that people want to see their own profiles. So this has just been an experiment so far. And one of the things we have pitched to the donor is to the RISA fund. It's RISA, which is, the acronym is Research and Innovation Systems in Africa. And it's funded by UK Aid. But we've pitched for some extra money for them to put together a little front end for the Maker Passport system. And if that's successful, Max, who's joining us on the call today, will be investigating what that might look like and putting together a prototype. But since this is a community call, I'm going to put out a call now. I'm very familiar with quite a broad range of platforms that share, say, 3D printed models. online, so you can download your STL files or whatever. I'm quite familiar with all of the websites that act as bureaus, so you can upload your 3D model and have it made by some pre-approved machining company somewhere. I'm not all that aware of platforms that share skills like this that are sort of ready to go, other than the ones that use open badging and other than the ones that use, you know, the likes of LinkedIn and so on. So if there is a plugin in WordPress, if there is a Drupal tool or something like that that we should be using, please let us know, because what people want to be able to do is to, and if you're doing something like that, please let us know, because in some respects the Internet of Production Alliance doesn't really want to be creating these platforms itself. It wants to be supporting the community who have these platforms. So we'd rather, you know, create the common infrastructures that everybody shares. So yeah, we're going to be, but the idea is to create a front end, and hopefully we'll get that. The request for funding went in yesterday, so hopefully we'll hear about that in the next couple of days, and we might be able to have a front end for this Maker Passport system. But that's been the idea. You need to know where the machines are, but you also need to know where the people are.
Yeah, and that was a mic drop. Yeah, you need to know where the people are, and Andrew has disappeared into the ether. But yes, absolutely. It's
If only we had some sort of standard for
if only we had some sort of standard for locating him. Ta-da! That was one of the.
Sorry, my battery died.
It was a really solid mic drop. You're like, you need to know where the people are. Out.
You need to know where the people are, and the whole point of this is, and one of the things we're really building up to in the Internet of Production, is to be able to use the people and skills standard as an indicator of quality of the products you're going to get made through distributed manufacturing across networks, but then also essentially as people's, it's a little bit like if your company doesn't have a website, you're probably not going to get as much business as if you were on the internet. Well, I can imagine the people and skills profile becoming essentially people's main connection to the Internet of Production. So yeah, that's how they will win work for themselves and for their networks, by having their skills profiles up to date. It's pretty crucial in terms of maintaining the data needed for the Internet of Production, because one of the theories with the Internet of Production is that people can earn a living from the Internet of Production, and by making things in this distributed manufacturing style, and therefore they are incentivized to keep their data up to date. A little bit like my local shop might keep their information up to date on Google Maps, so I know what time they're open, or whatever it might be. There's an incentive for them to keep their offerings up to date, so that when I search for something, they pop up in the search result and they win work. So it's a little bit, you know, it's one of these things we're doing the Internet of Production. We're trying to build the systems whilst also trying to build the incentives to do it, which is why we've taken this experimental approach. And yeah, I'm perhaps it's doing Gertrude a bit of an injustice talking about the Internet of Production so much as opposed to talking about the makers, but there we are. Hopefully she'll be able to join us in a future call.
Yeah, hopefully. I know that she's had a lot of connectivity issues. But so at this point, we have just a couple of minutes left on the call. And I think that, Andrew provided a really excellent synopsis of like what we're really trying to do here with this people and skills specification. It serves as only one component part to this larger system that we are looking to be stewards of, to help build pieces of, but most importantly, going back to the community aspect of things. And the fact that all of this work that we're doing as much as possible, trying to make it transparent, have it be out there so anybody can pick it up and run with it. Because as you know, platforms and technology has a shelf life. It has a life in that things, need to be dynamic and change, have the capability to change and flex to meet community needs. So that's the intent of all of this, to empower individuals to be able to create this distributed system in response to an antiquated system that doesn't serve everyone because of inequities in distribution. So at this point in the last couple of minutes, we have time for a couple questions if folks have any. Otherwise, we can just share I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see our contact information, how to get in touch, with always the open invitation to join our community discussions. We have a discourse forum. More and more, we are having collaborative and shared events with other organizations as we continue to strengthen the ecosystem. But yeah, I invite any questions. Feel free to unmute and just jump in, or you could type in chat.
I'm excited to see where was it the Pose project? Yeah, I'm really excited to see where the Pose project goes.
Yeah.
Do we have data when we're going to find out about that?
I think they said by February. I hope before then. I mean, it was such a compelling proposal.
Yeah.
They should. No, I mean, I think it's, I feel very optimistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'll be really interested to hear. But I mean, going back to what Andrew was saying, just the exercise of going through the process and really centering the community and, the governance and decision making and, that ecosystem aspect is the process is the destination, right? So it's
Right.
this work has been done, like it's already a win, so regardless of what happens. But yeah, I mean, it'd be wonderful to get the funding.
Totally.
Yeah. So we'll see where this goes. Oh, and just a quick note, this is going back to maybe something Andrew said, but also Toma. So far as, it was what Andrew was saying about the potential UI development that we're going to do for people and skills. If you're familiar with platforms, processes, but I also want to state that even if it's not a platform that is, specifically designed for makers or maker spaces, in the work that I've done over the years and the research for people and skills specifically, my understanding has been reaffirmed that a lot of spaces use pre-existing apps that have nothing to do with fabrication or manufacturing. And it's like one of the groups I interviewed for the development of this spec, I think they use like the Mind Body app or something where you could like schedule yoga classes and stuff, but they're using that to book workshops. Like it really is about the utility of the thing, not necessarily the branding of it. So any and all suggestions or recommendations or shares are welcome. You could do that in the forum. You can email any one of us and share to the general info line as well.
Awesome.
So yeah. Oh, no problem. The call is wrapped, so I'm going to stop recording at this point in time, and folks can stick around if